The billionaire CEO was minutes from engagement, until his high school love showed up. Matthew Washington had exactly 17 minutes to propose to the wrong woman. The velvet ring box was burning a hole in his pocket, his hands wouldn't stop shaking, and Victoria sat across the restaurant completely unaware her entire future was about to change. But then the door opened. And the girl he'd been in love with for 18 years, the one he'd run away from, the one he'd measured every woman against and found them wanting, walked in. The ring box suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Because in that moment, Matthew realized he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Welcome back to CJ Stories, where we bring you emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul. If you're just joining us for the first time, you're welcome to this wonderful big family. We're so glad to have you here. Please make sure to watch till the end, and if today's story moves you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and share this video with your family and loved ones. Now, let's dive into today's story. Matthew Washington's hands wouldn't stop shaking. 37 years old. Billionaire CEO. A man who'd negotiated 9-figure deals without breaking a sweat. And here he sat in his Mercedes outside Magnolia Restaurant on Charleston's historic waterfront, gripping a velvet ring box like his life depended on it. The evening sun painted the harbor in shades of amber and rose. Through the windshield, he could see Victoria Pembroke already seated at their usual table by the window, blonde, beautiful, perfectly composed in a cream silk dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She was checking her phone, unaware that in approximately 17 minutes, Matthew planned to ask her to be his wife. This is right, he told himself. This makes sense. Victoria was everything that looked good on paper. Educated. Elegant. From the right family. She understood his world, attended the right charity galas, never asked for more than he could give emotionally. Which, if he was honest with himself, wasn't much. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister Claire, *, Mom wants to know if you're really doing this tonight. I told her to back off but you know how she is, *. Matthew didn't respond. His mother had made her opinions about Victoria abundantly clear over the past 16 months. She's lovely, darling, but is she the one? You seemed so distant with her. The ring box felt heavier. He'd bought it 3 weeks ago at a boutique jeweler on King Street. 2 carats, emerald cut, platinum setting. The jeweler had assured him it was exactly what a woman of her caliber would expect. Not want. Expect. Matthew's jaw tightened. He shoved the box into his jacket pocket and stepped out of the car. The humidity hit him immediately, that thick Charleston heat that clung to everything, even in October. The scent of salt water and pluff mud drifted from the harbor, mixing with jasmine from the restaurant's courtyard. He'd lived in Charleston for 5 years now, ever since moving his company headquarters from Seattle, but the South still felt foreign to him sometimes. Mr. Washington. The hostess greeted him with a practiced smile. Ms. Pembroke is all ready. I see her. Thank you, Morgan. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the restored hardwood floors. Magnolia Restaurant occupied a converted cotton warehouse from the 1800s, all exposed brick and Charleston charm. Victoria had chosen it, of course. She chose most things in their relationship. Matthew. Victoria looked up as he approached, her smile warm but not quite reaching her eyes. She never seemed fully present with him, he realized. They were both always slightly somewhere else. Sorry I'm late. He bent to kiss her cheek. She smelled like Chanel No. 5 and ambition. You're not late. I was early. She gestured to her wine glass. I hope you don't mind, I ordered the Bordeaux. Of course not. They settled into familiar small talk. Her day at the gallery she managed. His conference call with investors. The fundraiser next weekend. Surface conversation. Safe conversation. The ring box burned against his chest. Just do it, he thought. Ask her. Stop overthinking everything, *. Matthew, there's something I wanted to. Victoria, I've been thinking. They both stopped. Smiled awkwardly. You first, Matthew said. Victoria took a long sip of wine. Actually, it can wait. What were you saying? This was it. The moment. Matthew reached into his jacket pocket, his fingers closing around the velvet box. And then he saw her. The woman who'd just walked through the restaurant entrance stopped his heart mid-beat. She stood in the doorway like she'd materialized from his memories, dark skin that caught the amber light, natural curls pulled back from a face that was somehow exactly as he remembered and completely different. She wore a simple navy dress and carried a leather portfolio, clearly here for business. But it was her eyes that paralyzed him. Those same eyes that had looked at him across a cafeteria table 18 years ago and made him forget his own name. Sandra Rodriguez. The portfolio slipped from her hands, papers scattering across the floor. Because she'd seen him too. Time didn't just stop, it folded in on itself. Suddenly Matthew was 18 again, sitting in the back of AP English, watching Sandra debate the symbolism in The Great Gatsby with such passion that everyone else in the room disappeared. He was 19, standing in her driveway the night before he left for college, trying to find words for feelings he didn't understand. "Matthew?" Victoria's voice sounded very far away. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." He couldn't answer. Couldn't look away from Sandra, who was now frozen halfway through, bending down to collect her scattered papers, staring at him with an expression that mirrored everything he felt: shock, confusion, and something else. Something dangerous. "I'll be right back," Matthew heard himself say. "What, Matthew?" But he was already moving, crossing the restaurant floor like a man in a dream, the ring box forgotten. Sandra straightened slowly as he approached. She'd recovered some composure, but her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her portfolio. "Matthew Washington." Her voice was exactly as he remembered, warm like honey, with that slight rasp that used to undo him. After all these years. Sandra. Her name felt strange on his tongue after so long. "I didn't know you were in Charleston." "I didn't know you were either." She glanced past him, toward where Victoria sat watching with growing concern. "Though I'm guessing I'm interrupting something important." "No. I mean," he ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he thought he'd outgrown. "What are you doing here?" "Business meeting. I run a consulting firm now, Rodriguez and Associates. We specialize in non-profit development." She gestured vaguely toward the back of the restaurant. "I'm meeting a potential client." "You're consulting for non-profits?" Of course she was. Sandra had always wanted to change the world. That's perfect for you." Something flickered in her eyes. "Pain, maybe. Or memory. You became a billionaire CEO. I saw the Forbes article. You follow my career? Don't flatter yourself." But her smile was sad. "My brother mentioned it. Thatcher still keeps up with people from the old neighborhood." Thatcher. Matthew had forgotten Sandra had an older brother. The memories were flooding back now. Family dinners at the Rodriguez house, Sandra's mother teaching him to make empanadas, feeling more at home there than in his own cold, formal childhood home. "How is Thatcher?" "Good. Sandra stopped, her expression shifting. "Matthew, I should let you get back to your dinner." "I'm sorry for." She gestured at the scene they were creating, other diners starting to stare. "Don't apologize. I'm glad, what? What am I glad about, it's good to see you." The words were inadequate for the earthquake happening in his chest. "You too." Sandra's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "You look good. Happy." "I'm not," he said before he could stop himself. Her eyes widened. For a moment, they just stood there, the restaurant noise fading to white static, 18 years collapsing into nothing. "Matthew." Victoria's voice cut through the moment like glass breaking. She'd left their table and now stood a few feet away, her posture perfect but her eyes sharp. "Is everything all right?" Matthew stepped back from Sandra like he'd been caught doing something wrong. Which was ridiculous. They were just talking. Except his heart was racing like he'd run a marathon, and his hands were shaking again, and he couldn't remember what he'd been about to do before Sandra walked through that door. "Yes, sorry. Victoria, this is Sandra Rodriguez. We went to high school together." The introduction felt absurd. This is the girl I dreamed about for years. This is the one I measured everyone else against and found them wanting *. High school. Victoria's smile was polite and lethal. "How sweet. Matthew rarely talks about his past." "There's not much to tell." Matthew's voice sounded wrong even to his own ears. Sandra was watching them both with an unreadable expression. "It was nice seeing you, Matthew." "Victoria." She nodded to each of them, then headed toward the back of the restaurant where an older gentleman was waving from a corner table. Matthew watched her walk away. The curve of her back. The way she moved with quiet confidence. The way she'd looked at him like she could still see the boy he used to be underneath the expensive suit. "Matthew." Victoria's hand on his arm was firm. "What was that?" "What was what?" "Don't." Her voice was low but fierce. "Don't insult my intelligence. Who is she really?" Matthew finally looked at his fiancée-to-be. Really looked at her. Victoria was beautiful. Accomplished. Everything a man in his position should want. And in that moment, with Sandra Rodriguez sitting 30 feet away, he knew with absolute certainty that he couldn't do this. "We should talk," he said quietly. Victoria's face went very still. "You're supposed to be proposing to me right now." The words hit him like cold water. "How did you?" "Your sister. She accidentally mentioned it last week." Victoria's laugh was brittle. "I've been sitting here for 20 minutes, watching you work up the courage, wondering if you'd actually go through with it." "Victoria." And then she walked in, and you looked at her like. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. Like I've been waiting for you to look at me for 16 months. Guilt crashed over him. I'm sorry. Who is she, Matthew? And don't say just someone from high school. He could lie. Should lie. But after 18 years of running from the truth, the words came out before he could stop them. She's the reason I know what love is supposed to feel like. Victoria's sharp inhale was almost inaudible. For a long moment, she just stared at him, her blue eyes bright with unshed tears. Then she did something that surprised him. She smiled. A real smile, sad but genuine. Well, she said softly, at least now I know why you always felt like you were somewhere else. Victoria, I never meant to hurt you. I know. She touched his face gently. But you did. And more importantly, you were hurting yourself. We both were. She picked up her purse from their abandoned table. I'm going to leave now. And Matthew? Yes? Whatever happened between you two 18 years ago, whatever you're running from, stop running. Life's too short to spend it half-present. She walked out with her head high, leaving Matthew standing alone in the middle of Magnolia Restaurant with an engagement ring in his pocket and his entire future suddenly rewritten. He looked toward the back corner where Sandra sat, discussing nonprofit strategies like she hadn't just destroyed his carefully constructed life plan. She glanced up, caught his eye for a heartbeat, then quickly looked away. But in that heartbeat, Matthew saw it, she felt it too. Whatever this was. Whatever it had been. He pulled out his phone and texted Claire, cancel Mom's questions about the engagement. It's not happening, Her response was immediate, what? Matthew, what did you do, He stared at Sandra across the restaurant, at the ghost of his past and the possibility of his future all wrapped up in one person. I ran into someone from high school, he typed back. And remembered what it feels like to be alive. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. 3 days later, Matthew sat in his corner office on the 20th floor of Washington Tech Solutions headquarters, staring at his laptop screen without seeing it. He tried to work. God knows he'd tried. But the quarterly reports blurred together, the investor presentations felt meaningless, and every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sandra Rodriguez standing in that restaurant doorway. His phone buzzed for the 14th time that hour. He ignored it. His assistant had already fielded calls from his mother, furious, his sister, concerned, Victoria's mother, threatening legal action over emotional damages, which was absurd, and 2 business associates who'd somehow already heard about the broken engagement. Charleston's elite social circle moved faster than fiber-optic internet. The door to his office opened without warning. Claire Washington Sterling breezed in, all 32 years of her carrying the righteous indignation of a younger sister who just had to explain her brother's behavior to their mother. You look like hell, she announced, dropping into the leather chair across from his desk. Good morning to you too. Matthew didn't look up from his laptop. It's 2 in the afternoon. That made him look up. The Charleston harbor spread out behind Claire through the floor-to-ceiling windows, sailboats dotting the gray-blue water. When had it gotten so late? Claire studied him with sharp green eyes, their father's eyes. You haven't slept. Eva slept. When? Matthew didn't answer. The truth was, he'd spent the past 3 nights in his Kiowa Island beach house, sitting on the deck, drinking bourbon he didn't taste, and thinking about a girl he'd known 18 years ago. A girl who'd become a woman he desperately wanted to know now. Mom thinks you've had a nervous breakdown, Claire continued. Victoria's telling everyone you're going through an early midlife crisis. And she leaned forward. I want to know who Sandra Rodriguez is and why her name has been in your phone search history approximately 60 times since Saturday night. Matthew's jaw tightened. You hacked my phone? You gave me access to your cloud for the family photo sharing. Not my fault you don't compartmentalize. She pulled out her own phone, scrolling. Sandra Rodriguez, 36, graduated from University of South Carolina, MBA from Duke. Founded Rodriguez and Associates 4 years ago. Specializes in nonprofit development and community outreach. Currently lives in Columbia but expanding operations to Charleston. Claire looked up. She's impressive. Also, absolutely gorgeous. Also, clearly the reason you just blew up a perfectly suitable engagement. It wasn't suitable. Not for either of us. Matthew. Claire's voice softened. What happened? And don't give me the someone from high school line you fed Mom. I want the truth. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, you remember when I came home for Christmas break my first year at Yale? I was miserable. Angry all the time. You were unbearable, Claire agreed. You locked yourself in your room for 3 days. I'd left someone behind. The word stuck in his throat. Sandra and I were friends in high school. Close friends. The summer after my freshman year of college, something changed between us. Or was about to change. I felt it, she felt it, we both knew something was happening. But I was 18 and terrified and convinced I had to follow the plan, Yale, then grad school, then the corporate track Dad had mapped out. So I left. Went back to school early. Didn't say goodbye properly. Didn't explain. Just left. Claire winced. Oh, Matthew. I tried to call her a few times that fall. She never answered. Eventually I stopped trying. Convinced myself it was for the best, that we were just kids, that I'd imagined the connection. He laughed bitterly. And I've spent 18 years in relationships with women I could never quite commit to, wondering why nothing ever felt right. Because you were comparing them all to her. Because I was comparing them all to a memory. Matthew stood, pacing to the windows. And then she walked into that restaurant, and it wasn't a memory anymore. It was real. She was real. And I looked at Victoria and realized I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. Proposing to someone you don't love. Proposing to someone I don't love the way I should. The way she deserves. He turned back to Claire. Victoria knew. She said I always seemed somewhere else. So what are you going to do about it? About what? Claire gave him a look that clearly said don't be dense. About Sandra. Are you going to let another 18 years go by, or are you going to do something? Matthew's phone buzzed again. This time, he looked at it. And his heart stopped. The email subject line read, Rodriguez and Associates, consultation request confirmation. His hands weren't quite steady as he opened it. Dear Mr. Washington, thank you for your inquiry regarding nonprofit consultation services. Rodriguez and Associates would be pleased to discuss the Washington Foundation's community outreach initiatives. I've reviewed your preliminary proposal and believe we can offer significant value to your organization. I have availability this Thursday, April 27th, at 2 p.m. for an initial consultation. Please confirm if this works with your schedule. Best regards, Sandra Rodriguez, founder and principal consultant. Rodriguez and Associates. Claire was watching him. You asked her for a business meeting? I emailed her consulting firm Sunday night. Matthew couldn't quite believe he'd done it. Couldn't believe she'd responded. The Washington Foundation has been looking for a consultant to help restructure our community programs. I saw her website, saw what she's accomplished, and created a professional excuse to see her again. It's legitimate business. It's also transparent as hell. But Claire was smiling. Thursday, you said? I haven't confirmed yet. Matthew, if you don't hit reply in the next 30 seconds, I'm calling Mom and telling her you need an intervention. He hit reply. Thursday, April 27, 2024. Sandra arrived at Washington Tech Solutions at exactly 1:58 p.m. Matthew knew because he'd been watching the lobby security feed on his computer for the past 20 minutes, refreshing it like a teenager waiting for a text back. When he saw her step out of a silver Honda Accord, practical, like her, wearing a charcoal pantsuit that was somehow both professional and devastating, he had to remind himself to breathe. This is business, he told himself. Just business. His racing pulse called him a liar. Mr. Washington will see you now, his assistant Rachel announced over the intercom, her tone carrying a hint of amusement. The entire office probably knew about the broken engagement by now. Matthew stood as Sandra entered his office, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. She'd pulled her curls back into a professional bun, but a few had escaped to frame her face. No-nonsense black heels. Minimal makeup. A leather portfolio identical to the one she'd dropped Saturday night. Everything about her presentation said I'm here to work, but her eyes told a different story. Sandra. He gestured to the sitting area by the windows, away from the formal desk. Less intimidating. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the opportunity. Her voice was carefully professional. The Washington Foundation does important work in the community. They settled into chairs positioned at a 90-degree angle, close enough to work, far enough to maintain propriety. The Charleston afternoon sun slanted through the windows, painting everything gold. Sandra pulled out a tablet and stylus. I reviewed the materials you sent. Your current community outreach model is solid, but there's definitely room for expansion, particularly in underserved neighborhoods. That's what we were hoping to address. Matthew tried to focus on business. We have the funding, but we're not connecting with the communities that need it most. Because you're not from those communities. Sandra met his eyes directly. No offense, but a billionaire tech CEO doesn't instinctively understand the barriers facing a single mother in North Charleston trying to access job training programs. None taken. That's why we need you. Something flickered in her expression. You could have hired any consultant in Charleston. Why me? The question hung between them, loaded with everything they weren't saying. Matthew could have lied. Could have hidden behind corporate speak and professional distance. But he was so tired of running. Because I trust you, he said simply. I trusted you 18 years ago, and sitting here now, I still do. You care about people, Sandra. Not demographics or statistics, actual people. That's what the foundation needs. Her hand tightened on the stylus. Matthew, we should probably address. I'm sorry. The words rushed out. For what I did. For leaving the way I did. You deserved better. Sandra was very still. That was a long time ago. It was. But I never apologized, and I need you to know, he stopped, struggled with words. That summer, what was happening between us, it wasn't just in my head, was it? No. Her voice was barely a whisper. It wasn't just in your head. The admission hung in the air between them, 18 years of might-have-beens crystallizing into one perfect, painful moment. I was scared, Matthew continued. 18 years old and terrified of what I was feeling. My father had this entire life planned out for me, and nowhere in that plan was there room for the scholarship kid from the wrong side of town? Sandra's smile was sad. I figured that out eventually, Matthew. Your father made it pretty clear I wasn't suitable for a Washington. Matthew's chest tightened. He talked to you? Called me actually. Right after you left for Yale that August. She looked out the window, her profile silhouetted against the harbor view. Told me you had a bright future ahead, and I seemed like a nice girl who surely wouldn't want to hold you back with teenage distractions. Jesus, Sandra, I didn't know. I know you didn't. And honestly? Part of me agreed with him. She turned back to Matthew, and he was struck by the strength in her eyes. We were kids. You were going to an Ivy League school, I was headed to USC on scholarships and student loans. We lived in different worlds. We lived in the same world that summer. For 8 weeks. Then reality came back. She straightened her shoulders, visibly shifting back to professional mode. But that's ancient history. We're here to discuss the foundation. Matthew recognized the deflection, respected it even as it frustrated him. You're right. The foundation. They worked for the next hour, and if Matthew had any doubts about hiring Sandra, they evaporated as he watched her mind work. She asked incisive questions, challenged his assumptions, sketched out preliminary ideas that were both innovative and practical. She'd built something real with Rodriguez and Associates, not just a business, but a mission. The key is trust, Sandra explained, gesturing to a diagram she'd drawn on her tablet. These communities have been promised help before and let down. They won't engage unless they believe you're genuinely invested in their success, not just looking for good PR. How do we build that trust? You show up. Consistently. You listen more than you talk. You hire from within the community whenever possible. And you give me full autonomy to design and implement programs without interference from the board. Matthew raised an eyebrow. Full autonomy is a big ask. Then hire someone else. But she was smiling slightly. I don't work for people who want a yes woman, Matthew. If you're bringing me in, it's because you want real results, which means sometimes telling you things you don't want to hear. I can handle being told I'm wrong. Can you? Because the Matthew Washington I remember freshman year didn't take criticism well. The Matthew Washington you remember was an arrogant 18-year-old who thought he had everything figured out. He leaned forward. I've learned a few things since then. Including that I don't have everything figured out. Their eyes met, held. The professional veneer cracked just slightly. Saturday night, Sandra started. I wasn't engaged, Matthew interrupted. I mean, I was about to be. Obviously. But Victoria and we weren't right for each other. That didn't have anything to do with me walking in at the exact wrong moment? With me realizing I was about to make a terrible mistake. He held her gaze. Victoria deserved someone who looked at her the way I looked at you when you walked through that door. And I deserved to stop settling for relationships that felt like business arrangements. Sandra's breath caught. Matthew, we can't. I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just needed you to know that ending things with Victoria was my choice. My decision. Nothing to do with expectations or pressure. Okay, she said softly. Okay. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. Sandra's phone alarm chimed, breaking the spell. She glanced at it, then stood abruptly. I have another meeting at 4. I should. Of course. Matthew stood too. Will you take the contract? For the foundation work? She hesitated, and in that hesitation, he saw her weighing risks and rewards, past and present. On one condition, she finally said. Name it. We keep this professional. Whatever happened 18 years ago, whatever almost happened Saturday night, we're different people now with different lives. I'm not interested in being anyone's rebound or nostalgia trip. The words stung, but he understood them. Fair enough. I mean it, Matthew. I've worked too hard to build my reputation to have it complicated by, she gestured vaguely between them. By whatever this is? By whatever this was, she corrected. Past tense. He should agree. Should let her draw that line and respect it. But standing there in the golden afternoon light, watching her try to convince them both that the past was truly past, Matthew couldn't quite manage the lie. I'll keep it professional, he promised. But Sandra? She paused at the door, turned back. Just for the record, you were never a distraction. You were the only real thing in my teenage life, and seeing you again isn't nostalgia. He held her gaze. It's recognition. Like remembering what it feels like to actually breathe instead of just going through the motions. Her hand tightened on the door handle. For a moment, he thought she might say something, might acknowledge the current running between them. Instead, she just nodded once and left. Matthew stood alone in his office, watching her cross the lobby 20 floors below, and pulled out his phone. He had a text from Claire. How did it go? She took the contract, he typed back. And I'm in so much trouble, he admitted. Good, Claire responded. The best things in life usually start that way. Matthew looked at the harbor, at the sailboats cutting through the water, at the city he'd made his home but never quite felt at home in. Until now. Until Sandra Rodriguez walked back into his life and made him remember what home was supposed to feel like. His phone buzzed with an email notification. From Sandra, contract signed. I'll start next week. Looking forward to working with you. Professional. Polite. Perfectly appropriate. He noticed she'd sent it at 3:47 p.m., exactly 13 minutes after leaving his office. Like she'd sat in her car, debating, before finally hitting send. Matthew smiled and typed back, looking forward to it too. MW*. Then he added, because he couldn't help himself, P.S, I'm glad you're here. In Charleston, I mean. It's good to have you back, He stared at the message for a long moment before deleting the postscript and sending just the professional response. But the feeling remained. She was here. In his city. In his foundation. Back in his life in a way that felt like fate or second chances or maybe just the universe finally getting it right. And despite her rules about keeping things professional, despite the complexity and the risk and the 18 years of history between them, Matthew Washington felt something he hadn't felt in longer than he could remember. Hope. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. 6 weeks later, early June 2024. The community center in North Charleston smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Matthew stood in what would eventually become a computer lab, watching Sandra explain the job training program to a group of skeptical community leaders. She'd removed her blazer an hour ago, sleeves rolled up, completely in her element as she addressed concerns and adjusted plans on the fly. Mrs. Patterson, you're absolutely right, Sandra was saying to an older black woman who'd been the most vocal critic. A 6-week program isn't enough if we're not providing childcare support. Let me add that to the budget proposal. And transportation, another woman challenged. Most folks around here don't have reliable cars. Already in the plan. We're partnering with Charleston Transit for subsidized passes, plus a volunteer driver network for evening classes. Sandra pulled up a spreadsheet on her tablet. I grew up in a neighborhood like this one, Mrs. Patterson. I know what the barriers are because I lived them. The room's energy shifted. Matthew had watched this happen in every meeting over the past 6 weeks, Sandra's authenticity breaking through walls that his money and status never could. All right then. Mrs. Patterson's stern expression softened slightly. Maybe the Washington Foundation isn't just another rich person's tax write-off after all. After the meeting ended and the community leaders filed out, Sandra collapsed into a folding chair, exhausted but glowing. That went well, Matthew said, handing her a bottle of water from the cooler. Mrs. Patterson didn't throw us out. I'm calling it a win. She took a long drink, and Matthew tried not to notice the curve of her throat, the way a curl had escaped her bun to stick to her damp temple. Tried and failed. The past 6 weeks had been exquisite torture. They'd kept things professional. Mostly. But working closely with Sandra meant discovering who she'd become, and every discovery made it harder to maintain the careful distance she'd insisted on. He'd learned that she took her coffee black with 2 sugars. That she hummed when she was deep in thought, usually old R&B songs her mother had loved. That she had a scar on her left hand from a cooking accident when she was 12. That she still bit her lower lip when she was worried, just like she had at 17. He'd also learned that she was brilliant at her job, fiercely protective of the communities they served, and absolutely unwilling to let him hide behind his wealth instead of doing the actual work. You can't just throw money at problems and call it philanthropy, she'd told him 2 weeks ago when he'd suggested doubling the budget instead of attending a community cookout. These people need to see your face, hear your voice, know you're invested. So yes, Matthew, you're coming to the cookout, and yes, you're helping at the grill. He'd gone. He'd helped. And he'd watched Sandra laugh with neighborhood kids, comfort worried parents, and navigate complex social dynamics with a grace he'd never learned in all his Ivy League education. He was falling in love with her. Had been falling since that first meeting in his office. Maybe had been falling since he was 18 years old and just never stopped. Earth to Matthew. Sandra waved a hand in front of his face. You okay? You've been staring at that wall for like 2 minutes. Sorry. Just thinking. About? About how your smile makes my chest hurt. About how I want to know everything about the past 18 years. About how keeping this professional is killing me, About the next phase of expansion, he lied. We should probably. His phone rang. His mother. Again. She'd been calling daily since the broken engagement, alternating between disappointment and matchmaking attempts. You should take that, Sandra said, standing. I need to lock up anyway. It's fine. She can wait. Matthew. Sandra's tone was gentle but firm. I've been hearing your phone buzz with her calls for weeks now. Whatever's going on with your family, you need to deal with it. There's nothing to deal with. My mother is upset I didn't marry Victoria, and she won't let it go. Did you love her? Victoria. The question caught him off guard. What? It's just, Sandra busied herself organizing papers. 6 weeks ago, you were about to propose. Now you act like it never mattered. I'm trying to understand. I cared about her. But love? Matthew shook his head. I thought what we had was enough. Comfortable. Compatible. But it wasn't love. Not the kind that, he stopped himself. Not the kind that what? Not the kind that makes you derail your entire life just to be in the same room as someone. Not the kind that lasts, he finished. Sandra was quiet for a moment. Then, my marriage was like that. Matthew's head snapped up. You were married? For 3 years. Ended 2 years ago. She said it matter-of-factly, but he could hear the pain underneath. Michael was a good man. Kind. Supportive. Checked all the boxes. But there was always something missing. Some spark that was supposed to be there and just wasn't. What happened? He met someone else. Someone he actually loved instead of just liked. Sandra met Matthew's eyes. He apologized for wasting my time, but honestly, I was relieved. We both deserved better than settling. The parallel to his situation with Victoria wasn't lost on either of them. Sandra. I should go. She grabbed her blazer, suddenly in a hurry. Same time tomorrow for the budget review? Wait. Matthew caught her arm gently. She froze at the contact, and he immediately released her. Sorry, can we talk? Not about work. About. Matthew, we agreed. I know what we agreed. And I've tried. God knows I've tried to keep this professional and respect your boundaries. But Sandra, working with you these past 6 weeks, getting to know who you are now, don't. Her voice was almost pleading. Please don't say whatever you're about to say. Why not? Because I'm trying really hard to do the right thing here. The words burst out of her. I have a contract with your foundation. A professional reputation to maintain. And you just got out of a relationship. That ended the moment I saw you. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Sandra stepped back, creating distance. You don't know if what you're feeling is real or just nostalgia or rebound or... I'm 37 years old, Sandra. I think I can tell the difference between nostalgia and... And what? Love? She laughed, but it sounded broken. You don't love me, Matthew. You love the idea of me. The girl I was 18 years ago. The what if you've been carrying around. That's not fair. Isn't it? Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. You barely know me now. You don't know that I'm terrible at keeping plants alive, or that I have panic attacks when I think about my mother, or that I push people away when they get too close because everyone I've ever loved has left. The vulnerability in her admission cracked something open in his chest. Then let me know you, he said quietly. Let me in, Sandra. I'm not 18 anymore, running away from things that scare me. And I'm not interested in some fantasy version of who you used to be. I want to know who you are now, panic attacks and dead plants and all of it. She stared at him, breathing hard, clearly at war with herself. His phone rang again. His mother, persistent as always. The moment shattered. Answer your phone, Matthew. Sandra's voice was steadier now, professional mask sliding back into place. I'll see you tomorrow. She left before he could argue, and Matthew stood alone in the empty community center, surrounded by fresh paint and broken possibilities. He answered the call. Finally, his mother's cultured voice dripped with irritation. I've been trying to reach you for days. I've been working, Mom. Yes, Claire mentioned. Some charitable project. Matthew, we need to discuss this situation with Victoria. Her mother is. There's no situation. Victoria and I ended things. It was mutual and final. Don't be ridiculous. Every couple has doubts before an engagement. You apologize, send flowers, and move forward. I don't love her. Silence. Then, love is a poor basis for marriage, darling. Compatibility, shared values, appropriate backgrounds, these matter far more. Like you and Dad? The words came out sharper than intended. That worked out great. Your father and I had a very successful partnership. You had a business arrangement. You were miserable. I was appropriate. There's a difference. His mother's voice turned cold. Matthew, you're a Washington. That comes with certain responsibilities. Victoria Pembroke was a suitable match. This sudden crisis of conscience is not sudden. And not about Victoria. Matthew pinched the bridge of his nose. Mom, I need to go. Is this about that girl? The one Claire mentioned from high school? His entire body went tense. What did Claire tell you? That some woman from your past showed up at the restaurant. That you've been reconnecting. His mother said the word like it was distasteful. Matthew, if you're going through some midlife nostalgia, there are better ways to address it than torpedoing a perfectly good. Her name is Sandra. Sandra Rodriguez. And she's not some woman. He stopped, struggling for words. She matters, Mom. Rodriguez. His mother was quiet for a beat. The scholarship girl? The one your father spoke to all those years ago? Matthew's blood ran cold. You knew about that? Of course I knew. Your father was protecting you from making a mistake at 18. Just as I'm trying to protect you from making one now. Her tone softened slightly. Darling, I understand. First love is powerful. But you've built an empire. You have responsibilities, a certain position in society. You can't just. I'm done with this conversation. Matthew. He hung up. For a long moment, he just stood there, phone in hand, rage and grief warring in his chest. His father had died 5 years ago, taking any chance of confrontation with him. But his mother's words echoed with the same cold logic that had defined his childhood: appearances over authenticity, status over happiness, duty over desire. He'd spent 18 years living by those rules. Building the empire they wanted. Dating women they approved of. Playing the part of the dutiful son even after his father was gone. And where had it gotten him? Standing alone in an empty room, having just watched the woman he loved walk away because he'd trained her, 18 years ago, to believe she wasn't good enough for his world. His phone buzzed with a text. Claire, Mom called me in a panic. What happened, She called Sandra, the scholarship girl, he typed back. Oh hell. What did you say, Not enough. Never enough, Claire's response was immediate, then say more. To Sandra. Tell her the truth, She doesn't want to hear it. Or she's scared. Big difference, Matthew looked around the community center, at the fresh paint, the new computers still in boxes, the careful plan Sandra had drawn up to help people who reminded her of herself. She'd built this. Was building this. And he was a complication she didn't need. But maybe complications were exactly what both of them needed. Maybe safe and suitable and appropriate were just other words for half alive. His phone rang. Unknown number. Matthew Washington. Mr. Washington, this is Detective Morris with Charleston PD. The voice was professional, serious. We're calling regarding Sandra Rodriguez. She listed you as her emergency contact. Matthew's heart stopped. What happened? Is she okay? There was an accident. She's at MUSC Medical Center. You should come now. The detective was still talking, but Matthew was already running. 45 minutes later. The hospital emergency room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Matthew burst through the doors, his expensive shoes squeaking on linoleum, his heart somewhere in his throat. A nurse tried to stop him at the desk, but he was already looking past her, scanning the rooms. Sandra Rodriguez, he said. They called me, I'm her emergency contact, where is she? Sir, if you could just. Matthew? He spun around. Sandra stood in the doorway of a treatment room, very much alive, very much not dying. She had a bandage on her forehead and looked exhausted, but she was on her feet. Relief hit him so hard he actually stumbled. You're okay. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. They said there was an accident, and I thought. I'm fine. Minor car accident, hit from behind at a red light. Just some whiplash and a small cut. She touched the bandage self-consciously. I'm sorry they called you. They asked for an emergency contact, and I couldn't reach my brother, and I don't know why I said your name. Don't apologize. Matthew wanted to touch her, to verify she was real and whole and safe. I'm glad you did. What happened? Some guy texting and driving. Rear-ended me at a stoplight. She tried to smile. My car's totaled, but I'm fine. Really? You're shaking. She looked down at her trembling hands. Adrenaline, probably. And I hate hospitals. My mom, her voice cracked. My mom died in a hospital. 4 years ago. Cancer. And being here, it just. Matthew did what he'd wanted to do for 6 weeks. He pulled her into his arms. For half a second, she was rigid. Then she melted against him, her face pressed to his chest, her hands clutching his shirt like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. I've got you, he murmured into her hair. You're okay. I've got you. They stood like that in the middle of the emergency room, professional boundaries completely obliterated, and Matthew didn't care who saw or what it meant for their working relationship. She'd called him. In a moment of crisis, when she was scared and hurt, she'd said his name. That had to mean something. Mr. Washington? A doctor approached with a clipboard. We're discharging Ms. Rodriguez, but she shouldn't drive for 24 hours. Is there someone who can take her home? I will. Matthew didn't loosen his hold on Sandra. I'll take care of her. Sandra pulled back slightly, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Matthew, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing her uninjured cheek. Let me take you home, Sandra. Please. She searched his face for a long moment. Then, quietly, okay. An hour later, Sandra's apartment in Columbia. Sandra's apartment surprised him. He'd expected something minimal and practical, but her home was warm, filled with plants, struggling but not dead, colorful art, photographs of family and friends. Books everywhere. A small kitchen that showed signs of actually being used. Sorry about the mess, Sandra said, moving gingerly to the couch. The pain medication was making her drowsy. I wasn't expecting company. It's not messy. It's lived in. I like it. Matthew settled into a chair across from her, maintaining respectful distance despite wanting to be closer. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a car. She smiled weakly. The painkillers are helping though. You should rest. I should. But if I close my eyes, I keep seeing the other car coming, and, she stopped, taking a shaky breath. Can we just talk for a while? About anything? Of course. Matthew leaned forward. What do you want to talk about? Tell me about your father. The request surprised him. You tensed up earlier when your mom called. And I remember you never talked about him much in high school. Matthew was quiet for a moment. He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. I'm sorry. Don't be. We weren't close. The admission felt disloyal, but the medication had lowered Sandra's filters, and somehow that lowered his too. He had very specific ideas about what a Washington should be. Successful. Powerful. Appropriate. Emotions were weaknesses. Connection was leverage. That sounds lonely. It was. Matthew looked at his hands. My mother tried, I think. But she'd been trained the same way. Duty over everything. I spent my whole childhood learning how to be what they wanted instead of figuring out who I actually was. Is that why you left? That summer? The question hung in the air, the thing they'd been dancing around for 6 weeks. Partly, Matthew admitted. I was 18 and terrified and didn't know how to want something my father wouldn't approve of. So I ran. He met her eyes. I've regretted it every day since. Matthew, I know you don't want to hear this. But you asked me to talk, so I'm talking. He moved to sit beside her on the couch, close but not touching. That summer, I was falling in love with you. And it terrified me because you didn't fit the plan. You were real and passionate and made me want things I wasn't supposed to want. So I did what I'd been trained to do. I chose duty over desire. Status over happiness. Tears were sliding down Sandra's cheeks now. Your father called me. Did I tell you that? You mentioned it in my office. He said I was a nice girl who would obviously want what was best for you. And what was best was letting you focus on your future without teenage distractions. She laughed bitterly. I was so angry. But also? Part of me agreed with him. I thought maybe I was being selfish, wanting you when we came from such different worlds. We came from the same world that summer. For 8 weeks. Then you left, and I realized, her voice broke. I realized I'd been right to be scared. Because you chose Yale and your father's plan and your future. And I went to USC and buried myself in studying and tried to forget what it felt like when you looked at me. Did you? Forget? No. The admission was barely a whisper. I married a good man and tried to build a good life, but there was always this part of me that was still 18 and waiting for you to come back. Which is pathetic and unfair to everyone involved. It's not pathetic. Matthew gently wiped the tears from her face. Sandra, I have spent 18 years comparing every woman I met to you. Every relationship I've had has failed because none of them were you. And I thought maybe I'd just romanticized a teenage crush, built you up in my mind until no real person could compete. But then you walked into that restaurant, and I realized, he had to stop, his own voice unsteady. I realized I wasn't remembering wrong. You're exactly as incredible as I thought. More, actually. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't read, want and fear and something else. This is the painkillers talking, she said weakly. It's not. And you know it. Matthew took her hand carefully. I know the timing is terrible. I know you have every reason not to trust this. But Sandra, I need you to know, what I feel for you isn't rebound or nostalgia or fantasy. It's real. You're real. And I'm done running from it. Matthew, I can't, we work together, and it's complicated, and then uncomplicated. Tell me you don't feel this too. That's not fair. Life's not fair. But for once, I want to choose what's real over what's appropriate. He squeezed her hand gently. Tell me you don't feel it, and I'll back off. I'll keep everything professional. But if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, I'm scared. The words came out broken. I'm so scared, Matthew. Everyone I love leaves. My mom died. My dad checked out emotionally years before that. My marriage fell apart. And you already left me once. I know. And I'm sorry. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles softly. I can't promise I won't screw up again. But I can promise I won't run. Not this time. Not ever again. She was crying openly now. What if we ruin everything? The foundation work, our friendship. What if we don't? What if this is our second chance, and we're brave enough to take it? Sandra looked at him for a long moment, tears streaming down her face, her hand trembling in his. Then she kissed him. It was soft and desperate and tasted like tears and 18 years of longing. Matthew's hand tangled in her hair, careful of her injuries, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just this, her lips on his, her hands clutching his shirt, the rightness of finally getting this moment they'd been denied at 18. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Sandra pressed her forehead to his. This is a terrible idea, she whispered. The best ones usually are. I mean it, Matthew. If we do this, if we try this, and you change your mind or decide I don't fit your world. You are my world. He pulled back enough to look her in the eyes. Everything else is just set dressing. She smiled through her tears. That's the cheesiest thing you've ever said. I've got 18 years of cheesy declarations saved up. Oh God. Too late to back out now. She kissed him again, and this time it was slower, deeper, full of promise and possibility. When his phone buzzed with a call, his mother again, Matthew silenced it without looking. You should answer that, Sandra murmured against his lips. No, he said firmly. I really shouldn't. For the first time in 18 years, Matthew Washington chose desire over duty. And it felt like coming home. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. 3 weeks later, late June 2024. Matthew woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows of his Kiowa Island beach house and Sandra's curls tickling his chest. For a moment, he just lay there, hardly breathing, afraid that moving would shatter the perfect stillness of the moment. Her hand rested over his heart, her breathing slow and even. After 3 weeks of stolen moments between foundation meetings and late-night phone calls, she'd finally agreed to spend the weekend at his place. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Sandra stirred against him. You should check that. It can wait. Matthew. She propped herself up on one elbow, and even sleep-rumpled and makeup-free, she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. It might be important. He grabbed the phone, ready to silence it, then froze. 15 missed calls. 23 text messages. All from Claire. His stomach dropped. The most recent message read, Matthew. Call me now. It's hit the news. What's wrong? Sandra sat up fully, reading his expression. Matthew was already scrolling through news alerts, and what he found made his blood run cold. Charleston Post and Courier * Washington Foundation CEO's secret romance, conflict of interest or second chance at love? Business Insider * billionaire Matthew Washington dating foundation consultant weeks after broken engagement. Charleston scene asterisk from proposal to new woman in 6 weeks, inside Matthew Washington's whirlwind romance. Oh God. Sandra grabbed her own phone from the nightstand. Her face went pale as she read. Matthew, they have photos. Of us. At the community center. Outside my apartment. Her voice cracked. They're calling me a opportunistic consultant who swooped in after his broken engagement. Matthew was already reading the articles, rage building with each word. Asterisk sources close to the Washington family suggest the relationship may have begun before the billionaire CEO ended his engagement to Charleston socialite Victoria Pembroke. Rodriguez, who runs a small consulting firm, was hired by the Washington Foundation just days after the broken engagement, raising questions about the nature of their relationship and potential conflicts of interest asterisk. It's highly unusual for a CEO to personally hire and work so closely with a consultant, said ethics expert Dr. Patricia Moore. Even if there's no impropriety, the appearance of favoritism could undermine the foundation's credibility. There was a quote from Victoria's mother, my daughter is devastated. She gave Matthew 18 months of her life, only to be cast aside the moment this woman appeared. And buried in the third paragraph of the Business Insider piece, according to property records, Rodriguez grew up in a modest neighborhood in Columbia, South Carolina, attending public schools on scholarship before working her way through college. The contrast with Washington's privileged background has some questioning whether this relationship is built on genuine connection or a billionaire's midlife rebellion They're making it sound like I seduced you for money. Sandra's voice was shaking. Like I'm some kind of gold digger who broke up your engagement. That's ridiculous. Anyone who knows you. No one knows me, Matthew. She was off the bed now, pacing. I'm the unknown consultant who appeared out of nowhere. You're the billionaire CEO who was about to propose to someone else. How does this look? I don't care how it looks. Well, I do. Sandra turned on him, and he could see the panic in her eyes. This is my reputation. My business. Every client I have, every potential contract, they're all going to see these articles and wonder if I slept my way into the Washington Foundation deal. Matthew stood, reaching for her. Sandra. And the foundation. She pressed her hands to her temples. God, Matthew, we just secured funding for the North Charleston expansion. What happens when donors see this and start asking questions about conflicts of interest? Then we'll answer them. We'll be transparent. About what? That we've been in love with each other since we were teenagers? That you hired me because you trust me, but also because you wanted me close? That we started dating while I was under contract? She laughed bitterly. That sounds so much better. We didn't do anything wrong. Didn't we? Sandra grabbed her clothes from where they'd been discarded the night before. You hired me in April. We started dating in June. I'm still under contract, Matthew. I'm still being paid by your foundation while sleeping with the CEO. So we'll end the contract. Or I'll recuse myself from foundation decisions involving your work. And that won't look suspicious at all. She was pulling on her jeans now, movements jerky with stress. Everyone will definitely believe there's no conflict of interest if you suddenly step away from oversight. Then what do you want me to do? Matthew could feel her slipping away, could see the walls going back up. I don't know. She turned to face him fully, tears streaming down her face. I just know that I've spent 4 years building Rodriguez and Associates from nothing. For years proving I'm more than just a scholarship kid from the wrong neighborhood. And in 3 weeks, you've made me look like, she couldn't finish. Matthew's phone rang. Claire. He answered. Please tell me you've seen the news, his sister said without preamble. I've seen it. Mom is having a meltdown. The foundation board is calling an emergency meeting. And Matthew, Claire's voice dropped. Some of the articles are dredging up Dad's old complaints about maintaining family standards. They're painting this as you rebelling against your upbringing by dating someone unsuitable. Matthew looked at Sandra, who was watching him with an expression that broke his heart. I don't care what they say. Well, you should. Because Victoria's mother is threatening to sue for emotional damages. It's baseless, but the publicity alone could hurt the foundation. And some board members are already asking whether Sandra's consulting contract should be reviewed for. Don't say conflict of interest. Conflict of interest, Claire finished. Matthew, I'm on your side. You know that. But this is a mess. You need to do damage control, and you need to do it now. He hung up and looked at Sandra, who was already reaching for her purse. Where are you going? Home. To Columbia. To try to salvage my business before every client I have starts asking questions. She wouldn't meet his eyes. I need some space to think. Sandra, running away isn't. I'm not running away. I'm protecting what I've built. Now she did look at him, and the pain in her eyes cut him to the bone. You can afford this scandal, Matthew. Your reputation is built on being a brilliant billionaire who makes unconventional choices. Mine is built on being trustworthy and ethical and above reproach. One of us has a lot more to lose here. So what are you saying? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm saying maybe everyone was right. Your father, my ex-husband, your mother. Maybe we are from different worlds, and trying to force this was always going to end in disaster. That's not true. Isn't it? She gestured at his beach house, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the private beach, the designer furniture, the casual luxury he didn't even notice anymore. Look at this place, Matthew. Look at your life. And then look at mine. I live in a one-bedroom apartment and drove a 10-year-old Honda. Our relationship is news because it's so improbable that a man like you would be with a woman like me. Stop it. Matthew crossed to her, gripped her shoulders gently. A woman like you, brilliant and passionate and real? Sandra, you're the most remarkable person I've ever met. The fact that we come from different tax brackets doesn't change that. But it changes how the world sees us. How they see me. She pulled away. I need to go. I need to figure out how to fix this. We'll fix it together. No. She grabbed her overnight bag. You'll fix your foundation and your board and your family. And I'll fix my business and my reputation. Separately. Sandra, please. I'm not ending this, she said quickly, reading his panic. I need some time. To think. To figure out how to be with you without destroying everything I've worked for. She kissed him quickly, desperately, then left before he could argue. Matthew stood alone in his $1 million beach house, listening to her car pull away, and felt like he was 18 again, watching the only real thing in his life disappear because he didn't know how to fight for it. But this time was different. This time, he wasn't a scared kid following his father's rules. He grabbed his phone and started making calls. 4 days later, June 30th, 2024. The Washington Foundation board meeting was every bit as hostile as Matthew had anticipated. 10 board members sat around the mahogany conference table in his downtown Charleston office, their expressions ranging from concern to openly hostile. His mother sat at the far end, her face carefully neutral but her eyes broadcasting disappointment. Let's address the elephant in the room, said Richard Blackwell, the longest-serving board member and one of his father's oldest friends. The relationship with Ms. Rodriguez and the potential conflicts of interest it creates for the foundation. There is no conflict of interest, Matthew said evenly. Sandra's work has been exemplary. The community centers are exceeding projected engagement numbers, and her programs have. No one is questioning her competence, interrupted Margaret Sutton, a philanthropist who'd served on the board for 15 years. We're questioning the optics. Hiring a consultant and then dating her while she's under contract, Matthew, surely you can see how this looks. It looks like two people who have known each other for years reconnecting, Matthew said. The timeline has been completely misrepresented in the media. Our relationship began after she was hired, and there has been no favoritism or inappropriate. But how can we be certain? Richard leaned forward. You've been personally overseeing every aspect of her work. How do we know your judgment hasn't been compromised by personal feelings? Because I'm a professional. And so is Sandra. Nevertheless, his mother spoke up for the first time, her voice cool and measured. The foundation's reputation must be protected. I'm proposing we suspend Ms. Rodriguez's contract pending an independent review of her work and the hiring process. Matthew's hands clenched under the table. That's completely unnecessary and would be devastating to ongoing programs. Then perhaps we need to discuss your continued role as CEO, Richard said quietly. Matthew, you're a brilliant businessman. But this situation raises questions about your judgment. First, the broken engagement, which was a personal decision that has nothing to do with the foundation. And now a relationship that, at best, looks impulsive, and at worst, suggests the foundation is being run based on the CEO's personal interests rather than its charitable mission. The room was silent. Matthew looked around the table, seeing doubt and disapproval in equal measure. I'm calling for a vote, his mother said. To suspend Sandra Rodriguez's contract and require Matthew to recuse himself from all hiring decisions pending the independent review. Seconded, said Margaret. Matthew stood abruptly. You want my judgment? Fine. Here it is, Sandra Rodriguez is the best consultant this foundation has ever worked with. She's transformed our community outreach from a well-meaning but ineffective charity into actual, measurable change. The people we serve trust her in a way they've never trusted this foundation before. And if you suspend her contract because of my personal life, you're not protecting the foundation, you're destroying the best thing that's ever happened to it. Matthew, his mother started. I'm not finished. He looked at each board member in turn. I know what you all think. That I'm having some kind of crisis. That I'm rebelling against my upbringing or trying to prove something by dating someone you consider unsuitable. He let the word hang in the air. But here's what you don't understand, Sandra Rodriguez isn't unsuitable. This board is. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. I started this foundation because I wanted to do something meaningful with my wealth. Something that mattered. But we've been playing at charity, writing checks, hosting galas, feeling good about ourselves while maintaining a comfortable distance from the people we claim to help. Sandra changed that. She made us actually engage. Actually listen. Actually do the hard work of real change. That's all very noble, Richard said. But it doesn't address the conflict of interest. Then I'll address it. Matthew pulled a document from his folder and slid it across the table. My resignation. As CEO of the Washington Foundation. Effective immediately. His mother gasped. Matthew, don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear. He looked at his mother directly. I've spent my entire life doing what the Washington family expected. Following the rules. Maintaining appearances. Dating appropriate women and making suitable choices. And I've been miserable. Sandra Rodriguez is the first real thing I've chosen for myself in 18 years. So if this board wants to punish her for my choices, they can do it without me. You're willing to walk away from the foundation you built? Margaret asked, stunned. I'm willing to walk away from anything that asks me to choose duty over truth. He stood. There's a second document in that folder. A recommendation that Sandra Rodriguez be promoted to Director of Community Outreach with full autonomy over program development. She's earned it. And if you can't see past your prejudices to recognize that, then this foundation doesn't deserve her. He walked out, leaving chaos in his wake. That evening, Sandra's apartment. Sandra was knee-deep in damage control when her doorbell rang. She'd spent the past 4 days fielding calls from concerned clients, reassuring donors, and trying to salvage her professional reputation. 2 potential contracts had been postponed indefinitely. 3 existing clients had asked for clarification about her relationship with Matthew Washington. She'd also been ignoring Matthew's calls. Not because she was angry, but because every time she heard his voice, she wanted to abandon all logic and drive back to Charleston, consequences be damned. The doorbell rang again. She opened it, expecting her brother Thatcher. Instead, Matthew stood in her hallway, looking like he hadn't slept in days. You quit the foundation. It wasn't a question. Claire had called her an hour ago with the news. I resigned as CEO. There's a difference. Matthew, you built that foundation. And you made it matter. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The board wanted to suspend your contract. My mother wanted to launch an investigation into the hiring process. So I gave them my resignation instead. Sandra sank onto her couch. You can't just quit your own foundation because of me. I can. I did. He sat beside her, close but not touching. Sandra, I'm done letting other people's opinions dictate my life. I'm done choosing appearances over truth. And I am absolutely done apologizing for loving you. Her breath caught. Matthew, I love you. He said it like it was the simplest truth in the world. I loved you when we were 18. I loved you when I was too scared to admit it. I loved you through 18 years of trying to forget you. And I love you now, sitting in your apartment, surrounded by your struggling plants and your case files and your beautiful, complicated life. Tears were streaming down her face. You love my dying plants? I love everything about you. He cupped her face gently. But more importantly, I choose you. Over the board, over my mother's approval, over everything. You asked what I'm willing to lose for this? The answer is anything. Everything. Whatever it takes. That's insane. Probably. He smiled softly. But I'm done being sane and suitable and appropriate. I want real. I want you. Sandra kissed him then, desperately, pouring 4 days of fear and longing into it. When they broke apart, she was crying openly. I'm so scared. I know. Not of us. She gestured vaguely. Of this being too good. Of finally having what I want and watching it get destroyed by people who think I'm not good enough for your world. Then we'll build our own world. Matthew pulled her into his arms. One where neither of us has to apologize for who we are or who we love. Your mother is going to hate me forever. My mother has hated most of my choices. It's kind of her thing. He kissed her forehead. Besides, Claire loves you. That's what matters. Claire doesn't know me. She knows you make me happy. That's enough for her. Sandra pulled back to look at him. What happens now? You quit the foundation, the media is having a field day, your family is furious. Now we stop hiding. Matthew took her hand. I'm calling a press conference tomorrow. To address the rumors and tell our story, the real one. About two people who found each other at 18, lost each other, and got a second chance. Matthew, that's going to make things worse. Or it'll make them better. Either way, I'm done being ashamed of us. He squeezed her hand. But I need to know, are you with me? Because if you want to keep this quiet, keep protecting your reputation by keeping me at arm's length, I'll respect that. But Sandra, I'm asking you to be brave with me. To choose this, publicly and completely, and trust that we'll figure out the rest. She looked at him, at this man who'd just walked away from his own foundation because the board questioned her integrity. Who'd spent 18 years measuring everyone against a memory of her. Who was sitting in her modest apartment, declaring his love like it was the easiest thing in the world. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay. She said it louder, more certain. Let's be brave. Let's tell our story. And if people don't like it, she smiled through her tears. Well, they don't have to date us. Matthew laughed and pulled her close, and for the first time in 4 days, Sandra felt like she could breathe again. There's one more thing, Matthew said against her hair. What? Move in with me. To Charleston. Build your business here, work with the foundation, assuming they accept my recommendation to make you director. Be with me, not just on weekends and stolen moments, but actually be with me. That's 3 things. Is that a yes? Sandra pulled back to look at him, at the hope and love and certainty in his eyes. 18 years ago, she'd watched him choose duty over desire and learn to protect her heart. But here he was, offering her everything, his home, his future, his completely derailed life, and asking for nothing but a chance. Yes, she said. To all of it. Yes. He kissed her like she'd just given him the world. Which, in a way, she had. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next. Now let us continue. 2 weeks later, mid-July 2024. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Charleston Visitor Center, a historic building on Meeting Street that could accommodate the unexpected media frenzy. Matthew stood backstage, adjusting his tie for the 3rd time in as many minutes. You look fine, Claire said, appearing at his elbow. Stop fidgeting. I'm not fidgeting. You've adjusted that tie 17 times. That's the definition of fidgeting. She squeezed his arm. You're doing the right thing. Tell that to Mom. Their mother hadn't spoken to him since the board meeting. She'd sent one text, you're making a terrible mistake, and you'll realize it when it's too late. Matthew hadn't responded. Mom will come around, Claire said, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. And if she doesn't, that's her loss. Where's Sandra? Green room. Going over her notes for the 50th time. Want me to check on her? Please. Claire disappeared, leaving Matthew alone with his thoughts and the muffled sound of the assembling press corps beyond the curtain. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through the messages that had poured in over the past 2 weeks. From his college roommate, *dude, is this the same Sandra from your freshman year? The one you wouldn't shut up about? From a business associate, * interesting choice. Hope you know what you're doing, *. From Victoria, *, I hope you find what you're looking for. You deserve to be happy, Matthew. Even if it took you breaking my heart to figure out what that looked like, *. That last one had gutted him. He'd called Victoria to apologize properly, and she'd been gracious in a way that made him feel even worse. I knew you weren't fully mine, she'd said quietly. I think I always knew. I just wanted to believe I could be enough. You are enough. For someone. Just not for me. And she is? This Sandra? Matthew had looked across his beach house to where Sandra sat on the deck, laptop balanced on her knees, working on the community center expansion proposal despite everything falling apart around them. Yeah, he'd said. She is. Now, standing backstage while reporters gathered to pick apart his personal life, Matthew felt surprisingly calm. Because regardless of what happened today, he'd already made his choice. He'd chosen truth over appearances, love over duty, Sandra over everything. The rest was just details. Matthew? Sandra appeared beside him, and his heart did the same stupid flip it had been doing since he was 18. She wore a navy dress, professional but not corporate, and had her curls pulled back. She looked beautiful and terrified. Hey. He took her hand, squeezed gently. You okay? No. Yes. I don't know. She took a shaky breath. There are so many cameras out there. We don't have to do this. We can cancel, release a written statement. No. She squeezed his hand back. You were right. We stop hiding. We tell our story. She looked up at him. I'm just scared I'll mess it up. Say the wrong thing. There is no wrong thing. Just the truth. Matthew cupped her face gently. We met when we were kids. We fell in love. We got scared and lost each other. And we found our way back. That's our story. Everything else is just noise. She smiled, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. When did you become so wise? About 2 weeks ago, when I quit my own foundation for a woman. He kissed her forehead. Ready? As I'll ever be. They walked out together, hand in hand, and the camera flashes were blinding. The press conference was supposed to be orderly. Matthew would make a statement, Sandra would speak briefly, they'd take a few questions, and leave. It didn't go that way. Mr. Washington. A reporter from the Post and Courier shouted before Matthew even reached the microphone. Is it true you resigned from the Washington Foundation because the board questioned your relationship with Ms. Rodriguez? I resigned because, Matthew started, but another voice cut him off. Ms. Rodriguez, how do you respond to allegations that you deliberately pursued Mr. Washington for financial gain? Sandra flinched, and Matthew felt rage surge through him. That's enough. His voice cut through the chaos. Everyone sit down, shut up, and listen. Because I'm only saying this once. The room went quiet, shocked by his bluntness. Matthew took a breath, then looked directly at the cameras. My name is Matthew Washington. I'm 37 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life doing what other people expected of me. I went to the right schools, built the right company, dated the right women, and I was absolutely miserable. Sandra's hand tightened on his. 18 years ago, I fell in love with a girl named Sandra Rodriguez. We were just kids, I was 18, she was 17. But what I felt for her was real. More real than anything I'd experienced before or since. And I was terrified. Because she didn't fit into the life my father had planned for me. She wasn't from the right family, didn't move in the right circles, didn't check the boxes that a Washington was supposed to check. He could see his mother in the back of the room, her face pale, her expression unreadable. So I did what scared kids do, I ran. I went to Yale and tried to forget her. I spent 18 years building a life that looked perfect on paper and felt empty in practice. I dated women I could never quite commit to. I built a foundation to help people while keeping them at arm's length. I became exactly what my father wanted, successful, powerful, and completely disconnected from anything that mattered. Matthew turned to Sandra, who was crying silently beside him. And then, on April 20th of this year, Sandra Rodriguez walked into a restaurant in Charleston, and I remembered what it felt like to be alive. Not the performance of living, actual, terrifying, beautiful life. The kind that makes you want to be better. The kind that's worth fighting for. The room was completely silent now. Did I hire her for the Washington Foundation? Yes. Because she's brilliant at what she does. Because she understands the communities we serve in a way I never could. Because her work has transformed our outreach programs from charity into actual, sustainable change. He looked back at the cameras. Did I hire her because I wanted to be near her? Also yes. And I won't apologize for that. A reporter started to speak, but Matthew held up a hand. I'm not finished. Sandra and I began our relationship in early June, after she was hired, while she was under contract. That created an appearance of conflict of interest, which is why I resigned as CEO. Because the foundation's work is too important to be compromised by my personal life. And because I was tired of choosing duty over truth. Mr. Washington, another reporter tried. Still not finished. Matthew turned to Sandra fully now. Sandra, I need to say something, and I know this isn't how we planned it, but... Matthew, what are you doing? She whispered. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. The same box he'd been carrying the night they reunited. The ring he'd bought for the wrong woman. Except it wasn't the same ring. The night after Sandra agreed to move to Charleston, Matthew had gone back to the jeweler and exchanged Victoria's emerald-cut diamond for something completely different, a sapphire, deep blue like the ocean, surrounded by smaller diamonds. Unique. Unconventional. Perfect for Sandra. Matthew, Sandra's voice broke. I know this is insane, he said, dropping to one knee right there on the press conference stage. I know we've only been together for 6 weeks. I know everyone watching this thinks I've lost my mind. But Sandra, I've been in love with you for 18 years. And I don't want to waste another day pretending that anything else matters more than this. Camera flashes exploded around them. You are the bravest person I know. You built something meaningful from nothing. You care about people, really care, in a way that makes me want to be better. You challenge me and ground me and make me laugh and drive me completely crazy in the best possible way. He opened the box, revealing the sapphire. And I don't have any more speeches in me. I just have this, I love you. I choose you. And I will spend the rest of my life choosing you over everything else. So will you marry me? Sandra was full-on sobbing now, her hands covering her mouth. The silence stretched. Sandra? Matthew's voice cracked slightly. You're kind of leaving me hanging here. She laughed through her tears. You're proposing to me at a press conference. I'm proposing to you in front of the entire city of Charleston and whoever else is watching. Because I want everyone to know, you're not unsuitable or inappropriate or a conflict of interest. You're the woman I love. And I'm done hiding that. Sandra looked at him, really looked at him, and Matthew saw the moment she let go of her fear. Yes, she whispered. What? He couldn't quite believe it. Yes. She said it louder, laughing. Yes, I'll marry you, you absolutely insane man. Matthew surged to his feet and kissed her, and the press conference dissolved into chaos, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, someone actually applauding in the back. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying, Matthew slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. I can't believe you just did that, Sandra said, staring at the sapphire. I can't believe you said yes. I'm going to have so many regrets when the adrenaline wears off. Probably. But will you still marry me? She kissed him again. Absolutely. 3 months later, October 12, 2024. The wedding wasn't at all what anyone expected. No grand ballroom at a historic Charleston mansion. No 500-person guest list full of society names. No orchestra or ice sculptures or any of the things a Washington wedding was supposed to have. Instead, Matthew and Sandra got married at the North Charleston Community Center, the same one where they'd worked side by side, where Sandra had won over Mrs. Patterson and the neighborhood leaders, where they'd built something that mattered. The space was transformed with flowers and lights, but it was still fundamentally the same room where they'd fallen back in love. About 100 people attended, family, close friends, and many of the community members who'd come to trust Sandra over the past 6 months. Matthew stood at the altar, watching Sandra walk down the aisle on her brother Thatcher's arm, and couldn't quite believe this was real. She wore a simple ivory dress, elegant but not ostentatious, with her curls loose around her shoulders. Nobel. Just Sandra, looking at him like he was her whole world. His mother hadn't come. That hurt, but Claire stood beside him as his best woman, squeezing his shoulder as Sandra approached. Who gives this woman in marriage? The officiant asked. I do, Thatcher said, his voice rough with emotion. He turned to Matthew. Take care of my sister. With my life, Matthew promised. The ceremony was short and meaningful. No elaborate vows written by someone else. Just the two of them, speaking from the heart. Sandra, Matthew began, his voice not quite steady. 18 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life when I walked away from you. I spent nearly 2 decades trying to fill the hole that left, and nothing ever fit. Because you weren't a hole to be filled, you were the missing piece. The real thing I'd been searching for in all the wrong places. He took her hands, felt them trembling. You make me braver. You make me better. You make me want to actually live instead of just existing in a life that looks good but feels empty. And I promise you, for the rest of our lives, I will choose you. Over comfort, over expectations, over everything. Because you're not just the woman I love. You're home. Sandra was crying openly now, but she was smiling too. Matthew, she said, her voice stronger than he'd expected. When we were teenagers, I was so sure you were out of my league. That loving you was foolish because we came from different worlds. And then you left, and I thought I'd been right. She squeezed his hands. But we didn't come from different worlds. We came from the same broken places, just packaged differently. You taught me that wealth isn't about money, it's about connection. About showing up. About being brave enough to choose love even when it's terrifying. She smiled through her tears. You chose me when it cost you everything. So I promise you, I will always choose you back. In front of cameras, behind closed doors, in every moment between. You're my second chance. My real thing. My home. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. By the power vested in me, the officiant said, his own voice suspiciously thick, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss? Matthew was already kissing her. The community center erupted in applause and cheers, and Sandra laughed against his lips. We did it, she whispered. We did it, he agreed. 6 hours later, reception. The reception was loud and joyful and everything a wedding should be. Matthew danced with Sandra to an old R&B song, one of her mother's favorites, and tried to memorize every detail. The way she felt in his arms. The sound of her laugh. The weight of the wedding band on his finger. What are you thinking? Sandra asked, looking up at him. That I'm the luckiest man alive. Cheesy. But true. He spun her gently. Also thinking about our honeymoon. 2 weeks in Savannah with no phones, no press, no board meetings. Sounds perfect. And when we get back, moving you into the beach house. Our beach house, she corrected. Our beach house. Starting your Charleston office. The foundation work. Don't forget the plants I need to try to keep alive. I'm hiring a plant service. That's cheating. That's survival. He kissed her forehead. I love you, Mrs. Washington. She smiled. I love you too. Though I'm keeping Rodriguez professionally. I wouldn't expect anything else. The song ended, and Claire appeared with champagne. Toast time, she announced. The DJ lowered the music, and everyone turned to face them. Claire raised her glass. I've known my brother for 37 years. And I've watched him spend most of those years being who everyone else wanted him to be. Until Sandra walked back into his life and reminded him who he actually was. She looked at Sandra. You didn't just save him from a loveless marriage. You saved him from a loveless life. And I will be forever grateful to you for that. Here, here, someone shouted. To Matthew and Sandra, Claire continued. May your love always be brave. May you always choose each other. And may you both finally be happy. To Matthew and Sandra. The toast was interrupted by a commotion at the entrance. Everyone turned. Matthew's mother stood in the doorway, still in her elegant day clothes, looking uncertain and small in a way he'd never seen before. The room went silent. Sandra's hand tightened on Matthew's arm. It's okay, she whispered. Whatever happens, it's okay. Eleanor Washington crossed the room slowly, her heels clicking on the floor. When she reached them, she looked at Sandra for a long moment. May I speak with you? She asked quietly. Alone? Matthew started to object, but Sandra squeezed his hand. Of course, Mrs. Washington. They moved to a quieter corner of the room, and Matthew watched anxiously, ready to intervene if his mother said one wrong word. But whatever Eleanor Washington said, it made Sandra's eyes fill with tears. Made her nod. Made her, incredibly, hug his mother. When they returned, Eleanor turned to Matthew. I was wrong, she said simply. About many things. But mostly about believing that duty and happiness were mutually exclusive. She looked at Sandra. Your father would have been wrong too. And I think, maybe, he would have been brave enough to admit it. Eventually. It wasn't a full apology. But it was a beginning. Thank you, Mom, Matthew said quietly. Eleanor nodded once, then surprised everyone by staying for the rest of the reception. 6 months later, April 2025. Matthew woke to Sandra singing in the kitchen. He lay in bed for a moment, just listening. She was making breakfast, probably burning it, if the smell was any indication, and humming that same R&B song from their wedding. 6 months married. 6 months of waking up next to her. 6 months of building a life that was theirs, not anyone else's idea of what it should be. The Washington Foundation had flourished under new leadership. The board had accepted Matthew's recommendation. Sandra was now director of community outreach, and a neutral CEO handled the administrative work. The arrangement satisfied everyone and, more importantly, allowed the foundation to actually do the work it was meant to do. Rodriguez and Associates had opened a Charleston office. Sandra's reputation, rather than being destroyed by the scandal, had actually grown. Turns out people liked the story of a woman who built something real and refused to apologize for loving someone inappropriate. And Matthew had started a new venture, a tech incubator focused on entrepreneurs from underserved communities. It was smaller than Washington Tech Solutions, less prestigious, and infinitely more satisfying. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire, *Mom wants to know if you're coming to Sunday dinner. She's making your favorite *. Matthew smiled. His mother's acceptance had been gradual, but genuine. She and Sandra would never be best friends, but they'd found a cautious respect for each other. He texted back, "We'll be there." Matthew. Sandra called from the kitchen. "I may have started a small fire." He laughed and got out of bed, padding into the kitchen where his wife was waving a towel at the smoke detector. "How do you burn toast?" he asked, grabbing the fire extinguisher they'd learned to keep handy. "It's a gift." She grinned at him, completely unrepentant, covered in flour for some reason. Matthew looked at her, his brilliant, disaster in the kitchen, plant-killing, absolutely perfect wife, and felt that same rush of certainty he'd felt at 18. This was what life was supposed to feel like. "I love you," he said. "Even though I burned breakfast? Especially because you burned breakfast." He pulled her into his arms. "Want to go out for pancakes? From that place in North Charleston Mrs. Patterson recommended?" Exactly that place. They got dressed and drove into the city, hand in hand, arguing about the radio station like they'd been doing it forever. Because in a way, they had been. Every moment of the past 18 years had been leading them back to each other. As they pulled up to the restaurant, a small, family-owned place in a neighborhood the old Matthew Washington would never have visited, Sandra turned to him. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Giving up the CEO position, losing your mother's approval for so long, all the chaos?" Matthew thought about it seriously. About the board meetings he no longer attended. About the society events he'd stopped going to. About the life he'd walked away from. "Not even for a second," he said. "You?" She looked at him, at this man who'd chosen her over everything his world had promised him, and smiled. Not even for a second. They walked into the restaurant together, just another couple grabbing breakfast on a Saturday morning. No cameras, no reporters, no one questioning whether they belonged together. Just Matthew and Sandra Washington, finally home. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more emotional and heart-touching stories that speak to the soul, and share your thoughts in the comments to tell us which story you want to hear next.